Hi, welcome to Quilting with Lori. My name is Lori Dickman. Today we're going to be playing with layer cakes, specifically my Speedy Solutions Scrap Stash layer cakes or 10-inch squares. We're going to create a beautiful block. In fact, it's going to look like this. This is what I'm going to teach you today. Very simple, and it starts with layer cakes or 10-inch squares. Before I get into showing you that, I do want to mention that on New Year's Day, from noon till 3 Chicago time, which is where I'm located, I am offering a Zoom class to anyone who's interested in joining us. I'm going to be teaching my Speedy Solutions techniques. They're techniques that teach you how to scrap up your stash using my Speedy Solutions techniques. This is what I teach in this book. And then, of course, I have the corresponding patterns book. And all of this teaches you how you can use your scrap stash to make some beautiful quilts. And it also helps to get your studio organized and ready to use to be able to make quilts from your stash. So that's what I'm teaching on a New Year's Day from noon until 3, that's Central Time. I'm also going to be teaching you how to pull scraps from your stash to make the two beautiful blocks in this Valentine's quilt. This is called the Bachelor in Love Valentine quilt, and it's out on my shop, on my website in the shop. It is a free pattern. It's something that you will get with this class. This 3-hour class is just $10. I'm going to give you the link so that you can go out to my website and click on the link and learn more information about it. And if you would like to join us, I hope that you'll join us on Thursday. What a great way to start out the new year, getting your studio organized and ready to go for 2026. All right, I have pressed my half square triangle. I've pressed everything to the dark side. I've pressed the seam allowances to the dark side. Now I am using a 9.5-inch ruler here. You can use a 12-inch ruler, whatever you might have. I have a 9.5-inch here. There's a 45-degree line across there diagonally. I'm going to line up that line on the stitch or the seam line there. I'm going to square this up to 9 inches. And the reason for that is I'm going to cut strips from this half square triangle that are 1.5 inches wide, and 9-inch square divided by 1.5 inches is an equal number. That will work perfectly. So I'm going to go ahead first and move it this way, get rid of the excess. If you have a rotary mat, that would be great to use that right now. I'm just making sure that I'm squaring it up on all 4 sides. Okay, so that's been done. Now, if you have a stripology ruler where you can lay it over the top of this and then cut your 1.5-inch strips, that's fabulous. I would highly recommend that if you have something like that. If not, just use your ruler and line it up so that it will cut, so that you're able to cut 1.5-inch strips. And I do have to move mine a little bit because otherwise I'm not able to see the exact location. And there are other ways you could use your square ruler and do this, where you can, in fact, cut them beautifully without moving your ruler like I'm doing. But for today, I am simply going to throw them off to the side as I cut them. Okay, so let me put them back in the correct position that they were. All right. There we go. So these were cut. Here's your half square triangle. Here's what you're going to do now. You're going to do some swapping. You're going to swap the second one here with this one. And you're going to swap these two. And you're going to swap the outside ones as well. So basically you're swapping the outside, the second two, and these, so that all the points are pointed this direction. It's kind of looking like, sort of like a bear paw block at this point. See what I've done? Now, we're going to sew these back together, but you're actually creating rectangles each time you do this. So here is the rectangle that is being created. There's one right there. And then I'm going to go ahead and sew those in a minute. But as you can see here, those rectangles together don't make a square. So you have to insert a 3-inch square from your scrap stash, which will allow you to connect these rectangles beautifully. And I'm going to show you how that's done. It's really quite simple. So first of all, and I like to do these in assembly line. Be very careful you don't get yourself mixed up though, but I like to stitch these two together and these two together and these two together, and I might do 2 or 3 or 4 blocks at a time. Stitch those together, then I'll stitch these back together until I have this long rectangle. Let me get these stitched. I'll bring them up here and show you what I mean by that. As you can see, I have those strips that I had just cut sewn together in 3 sets, and then I can put it together and it will be one rectangle. So that much is done. I do want to let you know that for each of these blocks, you need 2 light and 2 darker 10-inch squares, and they will create a total of 4 rectangles. And then of course you're also going to need a 3-inch square for the center. I'm using dark. All right, so I will get those sewn in just a moment. I wanted to share with you, here is a way that you can actually use a normal ruler if you don't have a stripology ruler, and you can cut the strips from this block without constantly pulling out the fabric underneath. So let me show you how you're going to do that. Because I've squared this up to 9 inches and I want 1.5-inch strips, the first thing I'm going to do is line up this edge of my ruler on 7.5. And that will give me a 1.5-inch strip right here. The next thing I'm going to do is line up this edge here with the 6-inch measurement there. And that will give me my second 1.5-inch strips, and I've got 2 of them there. Then I will line up my ruler on the 4.5-inch line right there. And I will make a cut here, and we'll have another strip that's 1.5 inches wide. Now we will move this to the 3-inch mark over here and make sure I'm level there. There we go. And then we go to the 1.5-inch mark. There we go. Now what you can do to get this changed around so that it matches this, let's start with the outside ones and we'll flip them like this. Then let's go to the second 2 and we'll swap those. Then let's go to the center and we'll swap those. Voila, ready to go. So now I can do the same as I have done over here. I'll stitch these 2 together and these 2 together, and then I'll stitch them together, and I will have 2 parts of my block finished. I'll do the same with these 2 half square triangle units, and then I'm ready to show you how to put it together with the square. We will square this up also, and I'll get to that in just a moment. Let me go ahead and get these cut and sewn so that we can get to showing you how this block goes together. By the way, the seam allowances, I'm pressing toward the dark, and so I'm pressing all of these where there's light here. I'm pressing everything out toward the dark. I did the same thing here. Everything is pressed toward the dark. So there is one rectangle that's finished. It measures 6.5? Yeah, 6.5 by 9 inches. So that's the measurement of each of the rectangles once they're sewn together. So I'm going to go ahead and continue sewing these together. Be sure when you're sewing, keep double checking that you're not swapping things around or doing that. That looks unusual, but you could make a quilt with this kind of a block. It's just a different look than what we're going for. But that is how it should look with all the points coming like that. And so I'm going to sew this together. I'm going to finish these 2, and then we'll get to this block. All right, the 4 rectangles are finished and ready to be put into the block. And I have my 3-inch square in the center. And what you're going to do first of all is you're going to start sewing, and it doesn't really matter what side you do this, but you're going to sew this this square, and you're only going to sew a half of the seam. So you're going to start at the edge and just sew about to the half there and stop. And then you're going to open it up, and then this unit will be ready to be sewn to this rectangle. And then this unit will, or this unit here will be able to be sewn to that rectangle. And then the third thing you'll do is sew this rectangle to this unit. And the last thing you'll do is finish up sewing this seam, which is now attached to that. And it might not make sense right now, but it will as I go through this. So make sure that you lay out your blocks first of all. And it's easiest just to lay them out on the side of your sewing machine. And as you can see, they're all placed in a perpendicular to one another position. And so I'm going to take this square and I'm going to choose this unit right here, this rectangle. I am going to sew a scant 1/4 of an inch from here to the center of that 3-inch square, and I'm going to stop. I'll bring it back and show it to you. All right, I have this 3-inch square sewn to this unit, starting at this edge, but I've left half of it unsewn. As you can see right there, that is loose. I stopped right there and I did a back stitch. And then I finger pressed it open. Now this unit is ready to be sewn to this rectangle. I'm simply going to flip it over, match up my seams, and sew a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance and press that open to the dark. I'll sew it and bring it back and show you what it looks like. This unit here has been sewn to this rectangle. Now I'm going to take this rectangle, flip it down, and I'm going to stitch it all the way across that unit. And I'll press it up and I'll bring it back and show it to you. So this is completely sewn here. The next to the last step is to sew this rectangle on here, and I'll start down here and I'll sew all the way to the end. And I'll bring that back and then I'll show you how we're going to finish the last seam. All right, I have all of these seams ready. Now we've got to sew this last seam, and it's very simple. All we're going to do is lay this here and start sewing at this point here where I had done a back stitch, and just sew all the way across to the end, and the whole block is done. So let me go stitch that. I'll press it and bring it back. Here are my 2 Scrappy blocks. What a great scrap buster, especially if you have an accumulation of a lot of 10-inch layer cake scraps that you can use. So I'm using a light and either a medium or a dark, and then I'm using a very dark center, or you could use a light center, a white or whatever color you choose. This will kind of be the landing spot for your eye as you travel, as your eye travels across the quilt. But I love the block. It goes together so fast. I'm just amazed how quickly you can put this together. And because it's a 15-inch block, mine is 15 inches, so it will end up being 14.5 inches finished in the quilt. But it's a great size block, so you're going to be able to put together even a king-size quilt in no time at all. Thank you so much for joining me today as I showed you how to put these wonderful blocks together using 10-inch squares or layer cakes and creating half square triangles and then adding a 3-inch square. All of this can come from your scrap stash. And if you know anything about me, you'll understand that I love to use my Speedy Solutions techniques. And I will link below in the description box the video that walks you through this techniques book. It will show you step by step how to get your scrap stash cut, sorted, organized, stored, and ready to use to make beautiful quilts. There's a total of 17 scrappy patterns within these 2 books as well. And if you're interested in joining me on Thursday, I sure hope that you will, for the New Year's Day workshop. It's just $10 for the workshop. The link to this in my shop will be in the description box below. So all you need to do is click on that link and it will take you out to my store there, and you can read more about it, and I sure hope that you'll join us. Thanks again for joining me today. If you do like the content that I provide, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. All of those things really do help the algorithm to get my videos out to other viewers just like yourself, and I really do appreciate that. Thank you so much for watching, for commenting. I love to read all of the comments from my viewers. So until next time, happy quilting.